Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. I am your running host, Dean Thompson, and we have a special treat for you today. I love having the opportunity to share stories with our very own Run Club members. And it's even better when the story is as great as this. And sitting across the desk from me today is Elizabeth Morey. She and her husband, Brian, a lot of folks, if you're part of Run Club, you know who they are. If you're not, you're going to get a little slice of heaven today as we talk to Elizabeth. So, you should be, today, after watching or listening to this podcast, you're going to go, I need to join that group because she's that special. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Good.
You guys had a good trip down from Ohio?
Yes.
Right?
And I drove the whole 8 hours. Big step for me. So that was nice to overcome fear.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it funny how we can do that in so many ways, right?
Yes.
A simple drive is a big step.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. And so you guys live where in Ohio?
Defiance, Ohio.
And that's where, so tell us where that is.
Northwest Ohio, like up in the far corner of Ohio. We're in between Toledo, Ohio, and Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
So.
I know that area. Yeah. You like it up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's nice to finally own our own home.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you and I met just a few years ago in Cohutta. We had a July 4th race, and you guys came down for that race. And I think that's where you and I met the first time.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And you guys loved Cohutta, I remember.
Yes, we did.
You guys were like, maybe we can find a house here.
Still trying to convince them every single time we come down here. Even have other Run Club members trying to do that. So.
All right. That would be awesome. All right. So tell us about your family.
Brian, we've been married for 10 years, almost together for 11. And then I have a daughter, Addison, from a previous marriage. And then he also has a son from a previous relationship. So just us, we have a small family. He was adopted, so he doesn't really know his family.
Yeah.
And then my mom's the only one left on my side. So.
Okay. And does she live anywhere near you?
About half hour.
Okay.
So when we come down here, it's like a family reunion. So
yeah.
We love it.
Yeah. Well, very good. Very good. All right. Well, you got to be careful the questions you ask, but do you want to share your general age for people listening?
I'm 33.
33?
Yep. It's just a number.
Yeah.
We've seen today the accomplishments of people older than me, people younger than me. So it's amazing. Age is just a number to me. So
amen, sister. Preach it. Cause I say that all the time. I'm 57 now, and I remember when 57 seemed old, and now I'm like, I don't feel any different than I did 20 years ago. Well, that might not be true. I might have a few more aches and pains, but other than that. All right. So we're going to talk more about a lot of this stuff that we're sharing right here, but and about your job. But what is your job? Because we're going to talk about that in your story. So tell us about what you do.
So I work at an automotive factory. I work with an automatic welder. So it's where I put the parts on and then slide the light curtain, and you have to step back out of the light curtain. It'll turn around, automatically weld the parts, and then while it's welding, I go back into the cell and put on another set. So you should get about 186 parts an hour. So It's a fast-paced job.
Yeah, it's just one right after another.
Yes,
all day long.
nonstop.
Yeah. Do you like that kind of work?
It's not my first choice.
Yeah.
I love customer service.
Do you?
And while,
I can see that.
I have issues with talking to a whole group of people. I love talking to people, having that connection. It's so much more than just going to work, being a number, and then walking out. I feel like there's no fruit there.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Yeah. But as you'll see, there is some fruit in what I've been trying to accomplish at work. So
Absolutely. All right. Well, we are not going to share. We usually share a Run Club post here, but we're not going to do that this week. The reason being because we're actually going to be a little bit ahead of schedule in our recording of these. So we're recording this actually on the day this morning. We did the Run for God 5K. And we're recording this same day since you were in town. We're taking advantage of that. And you did exceptionally well. You finished second overall for women.
I was surprised, very surprised, because this is the first full week that I think I've ran 3 times in a week.
How awesome is that?
So, it was a lot of pressure because at first I was the first woman and I was like, okay, that's a lot of pressure. And then, you're beating your husband. I'm like, okay, well, that's probably more important than being number one woman. So I was glad I beat him.
Yeah. Well, and every time you guys came by, I don't know if you heard Ted.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, the announcer telling everybody about how he was so far behind you. Yeah.
Yes. I like those updates though. That helped me. I could relax a little bit, maybe too much at sometimes, but
he got in a good jab at Brian there at the end when he said, you remember that woman that finished about 5 minutes ago?
Yes.
That was the other half. That was pretty awesome. All right. So we did have a trivia question for last week. So I'm going to talk about last week's trivia question answer. And last week's trivia question was one where there wasn't any right answer. And the question was, what is the most important type of run that you do and why? Do you have an answer for that? Is there a particular run that you?
We're not ones to stick to a training plan. So I like the long, slow. I feel like that's where I get the most benefit because if I run really hard, I feel like I've wasted all my time to when I'm supposed to run hard and fast. So mine's the nice slow approach. Yeah. Brian, on the other hand, he's opposite of me. So he goes fast all out all the time for the most part. So, but you can see. Well,
we won't tell Brian you're the wiser of the two, but well, for me, I think it depends on what I'm getting ready for. So if I'm getting ready for a 5K, then it's a tempo run, something like that. This feels critical to me. If I'm getting ready for a marathon, then the long run seems really critical to me. But overall, I have run a lot of races over my lifetime where I just don't really have time to fit in a whole lot of workouts. So I just do a lot of easy runs because it's easy for me to do easy runs because a lot of times I'm coaching and I can run with my athletes. And so I run the easy runs with them. So I wind up doing easy run after easy run after easy run. And, but I've run some pretty good races on nothing but running easy runs.
And you're the fast old guy, so it works for you.
It does. And so, I mean, for that reason, I feel like it's like this. Like when we train, if we go through a normal training program, there's a base period. And then you have these workouts that help get you better from there. But the base period gets you 75% there. You know, your fitness level wise, you probably get 75% of it out of that, let's say it's 8 weeks of base training. And then you're working on that last 25% for the next 12 weeks, right? Yep. And so I feel like that, for that reason, just the easy runs are just critically important. And we've talked before on here about why that is, about how it builds your blood volume and things like that. And so I think that if I was going to choose and say what is just for everybody, what's the most important run? It's just the easy runs, just the getting out there every day, and I say every day because I run every day, but if you 5 days a week, whatever it is, being consistent with whatever your plan is. So that's what I think. But if I only had one workout that I could do, like one hard type of run I would do tempo runs. I had a really, really good year back in 2013. I was 47 and, I had a really good year that year. Did a lot of, really ran some impressive times. And a lot of that came off of I did nothing but tempo runs that year. No track workout, nothing else. But I did a lot of tempo runs. Like almost every week I would do a tempo run. And so that seemed to be the thing that helped me. So, so I can't help it. Have an affinity for that kind of workout. Well, what's your number one? Do you have a kind of a workout that you like to do other than the long run? Is there a track workout, interval workout, anything like that you enjoy doing?
Well, where we're at right now, we're not as close to a track. So I like to go out. I try to do the first mile slow. And then usually if out in the country, there's telephone poles. So we try to do telephone pole. and then speed, and then slow down and speed up.
So kind of a fartlek run.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't know how long those are supposed to be in between, but
fartlek runs don't have structure. That's the whole idea behind a fartlek run, is you just do how you feel and run to wherever you want to. It can be, run by time, or it can be run by object. It can be anything.
Yeah, so. That's most of our runs have been by time. So we don't really have a mile set. We're just supposed to run hour and a half, and then we're done.
All right.
So
I like that. Now, the high school kids that I coach, they hate that. They hate when I tell them to run for 45 minutes. They would much rather me tell them to run 6 miles, because to them, 6 miles has an end. 45 minutes seems like forever. And I think in their brain, that's the way it is. But I told them, I said, well, if you hear me say 45 minutes and you're going to run about 6 miles in 45 minutes, then just think 6 miles. Don't hear 45 minutes.
Yes.
Well, I think one of my favorite workouts I love to do, I know this is just a crazy workout, but I love to do 10 times 1 mile. And a lot of times when I do that, I do it on the track. And so it's monotonous. But I don't know why I love that workout so much. I'll run a mile at a particular pace, and then I'll jog a lap in between and run a mile. So it winds up being like 16 or 17 miles by the time you get through.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know. I think it's because when I get through that workout, I feel really accomplished. I feel like I did something.
Oh, and mentally afterwards, I mean, that helps strengthen your mind too. And that's a lot more than just running.
That's always good. Always good. All right. Well, we're going to come back. Until then, listen to this about J Radio. You know that they sponsor us, and we couldn't do what we do without them.
While you're working hard to keep your body in shape physically, the music you listen to while you run can help keep you in shape spiritually. We've partnered with J Radio to put together a group of running playlists by Dean, Lane, Holly, myself, and others that you hear here on the Run for God podcast. Plus, you can listen to a playlist put together by members of Run Club just like you. Check out the whole station of Run for God playlist at jradio.com and in the J Radio app.
All right, we are back with Elizabeth Morey. Is that the right way to say it?
Morey.
Morey,
Correct.
not Morey.
No.
Morey. All right.
You know what? I don't correct Mitchell either. It's fine. We're happy to be here.
Well, it's one of those names where it could be pronounced a couple of different ways.
Yes. Well, I've heard Lori too after I've said Morey. So,
well,
we get a lot of different last names then.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. I guess that's one of the blessings of my life is my name is very simple. Thompson is a really popular last name, and Dean is really simple. Although I will say this about my name: there's a lot of things that rhyme with Dean, and I've heard every one of them. So mostly people picking on me. So listen, if you're out there and you're listening to this, and you're about to hear Elizabeth's story, and we need to hear your story. There's so many people out there. Boy, we were at the race today. I talked to so many people that have a story. Great stories. There was one lady, as she's running by, she's in the middle of this 5K, and she's telling me as she goes by, I had a heart attack 6 weeks ago and had 2 stents put in, and here I am. And I'm like, that's an amazing story.
Yes.
You need to write that down.
I was just telling Brian about that. Some lady had shared about she had done the Disney, and it's been 2 years since you guys have done the Disney, and she's had some health issues as well, along with me when we were talking about it. And I was like, you need to write a story about it. It's amazing what God has done in your life. So I really hope she writes her story.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah, for sure. So you're out there. Everybody has a story. It doesn't have to be this crazy thing. It can be very simple. And sometimes everybody out there needs to hear somebody. A lot of times we identify with people in regular, ordinary situations. And so, your regular, ordinary situation that you think is regular and ordinary may be an extraordinary thing for somebody else to hear. So get out there, write those stories up. You go to runforgod.com and go to that spot where it says submit your story. It's really simple. All right. So I don't know if we need to set this up. This is a tough thing for you to do. This was, it's not comfortable for you to share your story, but you recognize just what I was just talking about, right?
Yes.
And there's somebody out there, I guarantee you, listening to this as it comes out that needs to hear it. And so I'm sure that we'll get phone calls and we'll get emails saying, man, we so appreciate Elizabeth's story. So having said all that, I'm going to let you tell your story.
All right. Cultivating me. Cultivate. To prepare, foster, break up soil, complete upheaval in order to have new growth. This is where I've been since May of 2022, cultivating. I remain in the field being worked on and broken up. Why? Because God has fruit to yield in and through me. I wish I could say I have openly followed his plan. I slowly closed up and turned to isolation from friends, God, and even Brian. The fruit of isolation was anger, bitter, and depression. I suffered alone until I felt I was at my breaking point physically and mentally. This story is about life changes and cultivating a child of God's heart so that she can yield the kind of fruit that not only helps herself grow, but others in the field as well. In May of 2022, my life seemed to flip upside down, and I'm not one for change, but God's. I went from a stay-at-home mom to an empty nester 8 years too early, all the while becoming a workaholic seemingly overnight. Addison is my daughter from a previous marriage. Blended families add a twist to raising a child. Brian, my husband now, and I have prayed since she was little, and I knew that this day would come when she would want to live with her dad. I can't imagine how Addison had felt to be pulled between two parents and to finally feel what it was like to be in my ex's shoes with only being able to see her every other weekend. I turned to some trusted prayer warriors to help me navigate this decision, not only for me, but for Addison as well. One piece of advice I received related to the life of Moses. Moses was with his mom only a short while before leaving to live in Egypt. Look at the man of God he turned out to be. Addison, just like Moses, is being influenced in different ways. Addison moving out to live with her dad happened the same month I started my new job at my husband's work. Brian has tried for 10 years to get me into his company, so when the opportunity came, we knew I was supposed to take the job. I started my first full-time job in June of 2022 after being at home for 9 years. This union job was tough to even get into, let alone the effort Brian had put on my behalf. Now, being under the pressure, that was an understatement. It took 120 days to officially get into the union and for me to be able to relax. Every day leading up to my union day was a test, from the employees being busybodies and messing with my machine to the poor management and a run-in with a maintenance man belittling me. I hated my job and was a nervous wreck. During this time, I tried to impress my husband while keeping up with the demands at work and home, as well as juggling with my emotions with Addison moving out. I tried not to allow my emotions to show, so I used work as a way to cover up my pain. And before I knew it, I was working 60 to 80 hours a week, and my life soon revolved around work. I thought it would be a nice reward when I got into the union, so I bought myself a Jeep. I call it my empty nest crisis. I continued to work there to please Brian, and I would work more hours just so I could have whatever was next on my list. Soon the Jeep, trying to please Brian, and the list of things that I wanted were more only a reminder that I still felt empty and unhappy. The incentive to keep me at work soon wore off, and I became more resentful and angry. Working way too many hours and never having time off, I hated my job and didn't want to be there. Why couldn't Brian see that? But I was pushing on until I physically got hurt. Before long, I lost who I was, my focus and purpose, pleasing God. Following His will is my first calling, and if I put Him first, the rest will fall into place. I now have carpal tunnel with the possibility of surgery, which I'm against, but actually now wanting to have the surgery just from a break from work. One of my friends said maybe getting hurt at work was God's way of slowing you down. Since slowing down, I am now on a 40-hour work restriction, and I have more time for me, God's Word, and prayer. One day at work, I finally opened up to God about all that was wrong with the place I'm working. Why should I not work here? And why hasn't Brian seen this and let me quit? I heard God loud and clear. It's not to change. I'm sorry. It's to change my heart, not Brian's. Knowing I have a financial obligation with the Jeep, I feel indebted to stay at a place where I'm not even happy. So where or how can I show Jesus? God has shown me I can shine Jesus in light in dark places disguised as rude, selfish behavior, and through his strength, I can go out of my way to help others when I'm having problems with their machines. Until God shows me, I will continue to walk this path. I have slowly seen some things change with how badly I was belittled and saying nothing in return. Some have advised me to treat them the same way as they treat me, but my only response, how will that show Jesus? You know what? Because of situations like this, I have been able to share with others that I am a Christian, and I will continue to try to be a light at this workplace for as long as God allows. There is much work in me that needs to be broken up to bear fruit. I'm able, I'm willing, send me.
I love that last line. Willing, able, and you're ready to go.
Yes.
Man, I think that we've probably all been in a situation where we got ourselves into something. In this case, it's a job,
yes.
But it could be it can be a relationship. It can be, an obligation to help somebody with something. I've had situations where I told somebody I'd help them, and you go and you help them, and then you realize this is something different than what I thought I was agreeing to, right? And then you get into that thing, and it's like, this is, and it's like, I completely understand. And all of this is happening at the same time that Addison is leaving.
Yes.
And so your heart gets really tender in all those moments. So every time you hear something from somebody else that sounds negative, well, it's like picking at a scab, isn't it? Yeah. Is that what it felt like?
Yes, it was, and I'm not one for change. I like my little bubble. I feel safe, but I also know I do not grow if I stay in it. Yeah. And it just seemed like when I came up with Cultivating Me, it's like, wow, when just everything uprooted, but then there's time for planting. So I know something amazing will be coming out of this. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the lines that you had in there, maybe my favorite part of the whole thing is my only response is, how does that show Jesus? I'm a very I don't know if you're like me, but I'm a very reactive person. When somebody says something to me that makes me defensive, I have a really hard time keeping my mouth closed. Now, there's some people who are the opposite, who they would never strike back and say anything, and that's bad too, right? So It's both extremes are bad.
Yes.
I remember one of the few times I didn't get into many altercations at work, but I remember being at work one time and a guy that he knew where to needle me, and he would needle and he would needle. And he said something one day, and man, I let him have it hard. And it was probably, I want to say in that case, I think it was God. I think it was God that was teaching me a lesson, number one, but was also creating the circumstances that I needed to move forward in a different way. And you can look back on all of that and you can see it, right? You can probably see some of that now, and you can go, as bad as it was in the moment, I can see why. Right?
Yes.
Can you see that now?
Yes. And the person that I had the biggest issue with is now a little softer with me. Yeah. Now he's like that with a lot of people that, Brian says, looks vulnerable, or he does it to women a lot. So, and that is my biggest thing. I was like, well, maybe instead of retaliating and being angry with him, I need to show him love and kindness, because he's used to getting the same thing back in return, and I don't want to do that.
And you have the opportunity to be that different person.
Yes.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome, man. So I like the idea that it's getting better, and I love the title "Cultivating Me," because it's a good way to look at what God is doing for each of us. The Bible talks about how we're being perfected And God is working on us, trying, and if we're focused on him, and of course there's always, I mean, even David, the man after God's own heart, got off track, right?
Yes.
And so we all get off track. But the truth is that hopefully we have this line of, we can look back a year from today and look back a year and go, God's got me in a better place today, you know?
Yes,
and even
exactly.
if you're not actually in a better spot financially or physically or whatever, you know, spiritually you are. And I think that's what counts.
Yes.
And that's what being perfected means to me. And the truth is that having all of the negative thoughts that you have about the people that are around you, sometimes it's natural. It's not good, but it's natural, right?
Yes.
And that's, we should want to do better for sure. The guy that I was talking about, that I really let him have it, I felt terrible about it afterwards. You know, 10 minutes later, I was like, oh, that was so dumb. Why did you do that? Mm-hmm. But it was one of those steps. What strikes me in this too, and maybe you can clarify for me, it feels like you felt really alone during a lot of this time.
Yes. And
Is that a creation from you, do you think? Or why do you think you felt that way?
I feel like you've worked in a factory, and this has really been my first actual time of being in a factory, and to me, it feels a lot darker than some of the other jobs I've had, just because of the people and atmosphere.
Yeah.
And so you already feel alone, and you're like the one little light trying to continue to shine on.
Yeah.
And then I feel like also that I created it as well. You know, I didn't share with Brian or share with, you know, someone else on what I was struggling. I was like, oh, I can do it. I can do it all myself. I don't know if you've seen my Facebook during the time, you know, I was painting our entire house while working. So I was doing whatever I could to muster through and channel out my pain in other ways. So
you weren't only trying to cover the walls up, you were trying to cover up feelings as well, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that never works, because eventually it comes crashing down, and that's when I realized, you know, hey, I'm not alone in this. I need to pray and turn to God. That's probably why he had me go through all this, because he saw me drifting away. So I'm thankful for it.
Count it all joy. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. I'm so glad God's intervened for you. Proverbs 16:9 says, "A man's heart planned his way, but the Lord directs his steps." You know, Mitchell and I talk about it all the time, how we get this feeling like we need to help God, like he needs our help. But what we really need to be doing is get out of his way, right?
Yes.
And it sounds like that's what you're figuring out, that all this happened because God's trying to teach you to get out of the way, right?
Yes.
Is that the way it feels?
Yes. I feel like I have to suggest, or hey, if I go in front, I will follow through with my plan, or then everything will work out how I want it to.
Yeah. I love those times when you feel like you just know that God is pointing you in a direction, and you're certain of it, and you know, right? Mm. And I remember, I've told the story on here before, the confirmation that I got from God when I was running, I was at Shaw Industries, a job that paid very well, and I was there for 25 years. And I left that company, and I started working with Run for God, where I was making less than half of the amount of money I was making there. And you worry about money. I mean, we all worry about money.
Right.
And, but I remember thinking, well, I'm going to take this job with Run for God because, well, I don't have another job, right? So we're going to do it. And of course, I loved it from the very first second that I started. Of course, I was involved with Run for God before that in a less official capacity. We wrote the devotions book and stuff while I was still at Shaw. But after I was working with Run for God for a year, I thought, well, I'm going to look back at my bank account. Let me see how much more money. Have you heard this story?
Yes, I have.
See how much more money I've spent than I took in. Because, again, you worry. And I realized that I looked at the same date a year apart, and I had spent just $500 more than I had taken in. And I thought, man, that was God saying, I got you where I want you. See, don't worry about money. You're good. You're doing what I want you to do, which is great. But then an hour later, I came over here, walked into this very room, actually. And as I walked in, Mitchell said, I wish I would have known you were coming. I just put a check in the mail to you for $500. And it was an exclamation point from God saying, this is the direction I want you to go, period. And, since that point, I don't pay attention to finances. I know when I say that, people are like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, no, God's got it. Now, I wish I was that way in every area of my life, that I would give God everything that,
Yes.
because I don't, and if I were to say that, I would be lying. But when you do have those pockets of your life that you can say, God, you got this area, and I know you do, and I'm not even going to worry about it at all. It feels so liberating. And it sounds like you're on that journey right now.
Yes.
Getting that spot, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's a relief to have that and know that in whatever way I go, I will be fine.
Yes, absolutely. And you will be. Now this one's talking about the Lord directed our steps. And I thought about this. What if I came to your house and I walked in your house and I looked around and I was like, why do you have the furniture arranged this way? Right?
Right.
You'd be like offended. Like, what are you talking about? This is the way I like it. I live here. Well, that's the way we are with God. Right? We're walking into God's world and we're going, God, I don't like the way you arrange the furniture. It's so silly when you think about it that way, right?
Yes.
But isn't that what we do?
Yes. And it's not good when you realize and go through it all.
Yeah. This first question, why is it so hard to surrender our plans to God? I think we all wonder that, right? So what do you think? Why is it a problem for us to say, God, I've seen you do it before. Here it is. Take it.
Well, like I said, I'm praying all the time that I would just surrender everything, but I feel like, just like with Addison, for an example, when she's younger, I wanted to keep her in her bubble because you could see the next steps, and it's like, that's not a good one.
Yep.
But I've slowly backed away because she has to learn that same way with me. If I don't just trust God and pray and let it down at His feet, how am I supposed to learn, or how am I supposed to be like, okay, God got me through the same exact scenario just a few years ago and I was fine. I didn't have to freak out and worry,
That's right. But it's so hard.
Yes.
And I think part of the reason why it's hard, this is my take on it, is I think it's hard because we know the Bible also tells us that we have to work if we want to eat, right? I mean, it's very clear that we should be working hard as well. So God's telling us, work hard, but make sure that I'm the one that's telling you what to do. And so that's hard to find that line, right? Because we want to do and we want to accomplish and we want to get stuff done. And sometimes we just get out ahead of what God's got for us to do, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that very often when we get into this spot where we wonder, why didn't we let God have it? I think it's almost always completely innocent. I think we have these great intentions. I was trying to accomplish something really good here. And then, I messed it up because I didn't do what God wanted me to do. And I think that's the thing that's where Satan wants us. He wants us busy working on stuff we don't need to be working on, right?
Yeah. So it takes the focus off God and what He's given us and be happy with that instead of working for ourselves.
Yeah. So what Satan does is he takes that good thing that you're doing, that charity work that you're doing, that whatever it is that you're doing, that seems to be a good thing, and he dresses it up like it's this wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. I think that's why it's really hard to tell. But I think the bottom line is that if we are earnestly seeking God, if that's what we're doing, if we're really, really focused on, okay, God, please give me signs, tell me what you want me to do, and I will do it. Just like at the end of your story, you're able, you're willing, send me. That's got to be our attitude. And when it is, I think that if we live that every day, He's going to show us. right?
Yes.
The problem is we don't do it every day.
Exactly.
We get up that day and we're like, oh, I got stuff to do. We start getting busy, right? Yep. I'm so bad about it. Ecclesiastes 2:10 and 11 says, whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands have done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. That's such a powerful passage, because we're talking about, of course, King Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes, and he's talking about in his own life he could have anything. He was so rich, he could have whatever he wanted. If he saw something, he wanted one, he could get it. Can you imagine? You see anything you want, you can have it. And he found that I think it's like for all of us, if we found ourselves in that position, it'd be great for about 2 months.
Yes.
Right? And then when we'd realize, even when I get all the stuff I want, it doesn't matter, because without God, none of it means anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's hard to do that when you can't go out and get everything you want, because you always think, if I get that thing, well, then I'll be happy. Right? Right. Do you feel like that was part of the Jeep thing, or do you think the Jeep thing was just, I just wanted one because I'd always wanted one? Or
actually, I've never wanted a Jeep. I don't. Yeah. We joke about, Brian says it's a Jeep cult because of the ducks and everything, which I had no idea about it. Me, I love being in the sun. Okay. So having everything off. Yeah. It was the thing that I wanted, but I also don't like driving in the snow. So it was all wheel drive and everything. So that was awesome for me. There was a car I was looking at. It was a small Buick. Yeah. I was like, we travel a lot. And even for this weekend, the whole Jeep was full. It was just us. Yeah. So first it was, hey, I want this Jeep because that's what's going to keep me here. And then it was also at the same time I felt empty because of Addison not being at home with us. Yeah. And I was like, well, I can have fun with it, and do whatever. And then it's like, well, afterwards it's like, so what? It's just a car, and just like anything else. So it's kind of a combination of both, but it's worn off. It's just now a vehicle to get us through and to get us through these mountains as well. So it's proven to help.
For sure. Now, do you feel thankful for it though?
I am thankful for the Jeep.
Because I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people acquire a lot of stuff and they don't really feel thankful for it. And I think I bought my first new vehicle when I was 54 years old. I had never had a new vehicle before, and I wasn't going to buy a new vehicle, and Debbie kind of talked me into it. And then I picked one out, and it was like, no, that's not the one you really want. You really want this one over here. Debbie's awesome. Anyway, but I'm so thankful to have something, because a lot of times when you live through, when you're not King Solomon and you can't have everything you want, and you finally get something, you really appreciate it more.
Well, I think also you've done my first testimony, on episode 50, and I came from a very poor family, so I had absolutely nothing, and then Brian was the one always working and providing, and which I'm very grateful for. And now I've on the other side of it and at his work. So it's like, oh, now I understand what you're going through and what you're talking about. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I was never able to have this or have that option to be like, okay, well, yeah, sure, why not? And it's like, well, there was a lot of things we probably should have prayed about definitely before, but just like in the passage, it was want.
Yep. And it's that perfecting. Right?
Yes.
We're getting better because we're learning through the things that we do and the things that we don't do. Bottom line is, what Solomon is saying here is earthly stuff is never going to satisfy us. It's never going to do it. Here's a second question. Does getting what you want truly make you happy? My answer to that question is, it depends on what you want, right? If, again, going to that last sentence of your story, if that's the desire of your heart every day, then I think that getting what you want will make you happy. Because what you want is for God to be pleased with what you're doing. And if you get that, you're going to be happy,
Yes.
But if it's a thing, that's probably not going to do it.
Yes. My thing ended up being, an expensive thing, versus, a new couch. Even those can be a little expensive too. But so it's been a learning experience.
It's good stuff. I remember, again, going back to the job that I had been on for 25 years, and I fought with God so much over leaving that job that He was making it clear that I should be looking elsewhere. And of course, during that time, I wasn't happy. And it was because I wasn't listening to Him. He's trying to point me in a direction. He's whacking me upside the head with a 2x4 every other day, making it obvious. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever, God. You know what I mean? You look back on it and you go, that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But eventually he got my attention. But I liked, last night Mitchell mentioned we were talking about the walking program and how it all started. And I don't know if you caught what he said, but he said he got the blessing of a knee injury.
Yes. That
kind of forced him to start walking, and that really changed our whole trajectory on how we looked at walking and Run for God. And even a bad thing like an injury can really be a blessing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yes, I am finding that out.
Well, you mentioned that, right?
Yes.
That maybe that's why God's got you slowed down right now, right?
Exactly.
You think that's the case?
Yes, I believe it is. It's definitely put me back onto who is important in my life, and that's what I needed. That's good.
That's good. Well, so do you feel like He's pointing you in a definite direction now?
Honestly, I'm still unclear on that. Okay. Yeah. But there are, I have now to update, I have had surgery. I'm post 3 weeks out from my surgery. There are things that I feel cautious about going back because I'm afraid of being put on the same machines that had caused my injury. Yeah. I never had carpal tunnel before. This is all work related.
And have you done secretarial work before? Is that what you said? Or
yes,
customer service, which
but
a lot of times
it's not a constant,
right?
Typing.
Right.
Some people think that's all you do for 8 hours or whatever. And it's like, no, I do a lot more different stuff. And you have more breaks there. You have to constantly work or you're not going to make rate. We have a rate that we have to make.
Right.
And so I'm good at my job because I don't want to, let my supervisor down or anything. So I do make rate.
Yeah.
And I even was pulled off of it at one point, and my supervisor's like, no, she has to be on it because she makes rate. And I was like, oh, that's, that's great. So Brian and I actually had talked about it before even coming in here, about what I would do, because it is a union place. And so there are union representatives to help talk. And so if I get put back on those machines, we've talked about it since I have had the surgery. It doesn't mean I want to go right back onto the same machine that caused injury, because I do have it slightly on my left side.
Yeah.
So we have discussed that I would go to the union representative, talk to her, and then she would go with me to talk with the supervisor. And if she continued to keep me on there, I will be leaving that place then.
Yeah.
So okay. I have to outweigh, is it worth it to continue to get hurt at a place versus the money?
Yeah.
And yes, the money is a lot better than some other places, but to me, it's not worth it. Yeah. Even when Brian was on his own, I always told him, I like when you work overtime so we can do the vacation, but sometimes I'd rather just have you at home than the money. And we have to remember what's important.
There are definitely things, and that's what Solomon's saying here, right?
Yes.
He's saying that there's more important things than money, for sure.
Yes.
And again, through my situation, I've learned it very, very vividly that money is just not. It's never going to make you happy. So is it clear? And you sound clear at this point in time that you feel like you're in a better place. for sure.
Yes, I believe that the 40 hours has helped. Now, there is a timeline on that 40 hours. So my doctor gave me a 6-month 40 hours, and that is up in the end of June. Okay. So then it's an automotive, so they mandate all the time. They joke about it. It looks like the Bible. Your name will be in black, and it will be red, mandate. And so you'll just see a whole list when you come in.
Is that right?
And I've even suggested, they don't have a good work-life balance. It's either you work there and don't have a life, or, you're people that's not on there. There is a lot of injuries due to the repetitive motions there. So it is hard. And then I have to battle with what I will do on that. So
that's a tough balance.
Yes.
But I think there's, I think there's a time and place to really step back and evaluate all of that. Habakkuk 3:17 and 18. Though the fig tree may not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, though the labor of the olive may fail, and the fields yield no food, though the flock may be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. That's a tough scripture, I think. It's one of those things where you're saying it doesn't matter how bad it gets. I mean, it's a great scripture, but it's a hard one to actually do, right?
Yes.
When you're in the middle of that, it's really, really hard.
Yes.
So I read a story about this scripture that Benjamin Franklin used this scripture one time. Benjamin Franklin was a deist. He wasn't even a Christian, but somebody was giving him trouble with the fact that Benjamin Franklin, even though he wasn't a Christian, he had a lot of respect for Christians and for the Bible. And he used this scripture one time to make a point to some people who are some intellectuals who are giving him a hard time about believing things or not believing things or having any respect at all for Christianity. And so he told this couple that I'm going to read you this thing I found from this ancient manuscript. And he read out this scripture. A little bit more than that, but basically this scripture. And they were like, "Oh, that's beautiful." And then he was like, "Yeah, it's from the Bible." I think that's a great story.
Yes.
This is something that it's beautifully written. Again, a tough thing to do. In today's world kind of directs us to wallow in our misery. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really does. It's like, how big of a victim can you possibly be? And that makes you more important. I mean, and I see it, I deal with young folks a lot, and I see a lot in young folks. It's almost like they want to be unhappy. Mm-hmm. And so we see that all around us. And so it's hard not to fall into that same pattern because we just see it. And I do it. We all do it.
Yes.
I want to say there's nobody exempt. I've met a few people. I've got an old pastor friend who, God, it doesn't matter what's going on. I mean, it doesn't matter. It could be the most horrendous circumstances in the world. He'll find some way to make it positive. And I'm so envious of being able to look at things that way.
Yes.
Because most of us don't. And again, it's hard when the world is saying "woe is me" as a good response to everything. That it's hard not to, mm-hmm. because that's our example. But the truth is that at the end of the day, no matter how bad things get, and whatever we're doing, whether that be at work, it be at home, it be in a relationship, it be whatever we're doing at our church, even our running, whatever it is, God is still everything. And as long as you live by that last sentence in your story, none of that matters. And I read this. I said, it said, if we know who God is and what He has done, we can't help but praise Him. Right?
Yes.
And we do know. Mm-hmm. That's the bad part, is we know.
Yes.
And we still fall victim. How about this question? When times are hard, where do you look or turn to? So what do you do? Where's your default position? We want our default position to be, as soon as things happen, to be God, right? To think of it like that friend I was talking about. It's, there's a tornado coming, but he's going to find some way of making something positive out of it. How do we get there?
Oh, geez. When I feel like I got it. Same thing with going all through my story and stuff and, holding it to myself and feeling isolated. I looked at myself and I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Like, it's all my fault, you know? And so I just keep it there until, I'll just sit and pray. We have our own little prayer room, and sometimes I don't even know what to say, in Romans 8, it says, while we may not know what to pray, the Spirit knows. Yeah. And I'll just sit there, and then it's like, God knows what I need, what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm supposed to be talking to Him, not talking out loud to myself or punishing myself for it. So. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that perfection thing, being perfected, is we hope that I look at it this way. I want that time to be shorter and shorter between what happens and when I get to that position like you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about how if I run a race, Debbie goes to a few of my races, but most of the time she doesn't go to my race. So when I get through with a race, I call her and tell her how it went. And she looks forward to that phone call. And I look forward to that phone call. And doesn't matter how good or how bad, I'm going to call. She knows I'm going to call. And so whenever I get through the race, it doesn't matter if I've got a bunch of friends around. I'm like, hold on a second. I got to call my wife, and I go take off and go call her. And it's an automatic thing is what I'm saying.
Yes.
I feel the yearning when I get through with a race. I feel that, I need to make a phone call, right? That's how we want things to be when things happen to us that are not necessarily positive, is our first reaction to be, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me? And if we can do that,
we could probably save ourselves from a lot of suffering on our own end.
Oh my goodness, couldn't we? Whoa. I'm convinced that part of the reason why God gives us, and I think you mentioned this actually, part of the reason why God gives us bad circumstances is so we can get better at relying on Him. Because at some point in time, we all get to that position where you just don't have any choice but to rely on Him, right? When I left that job that I was in, I got to a pretty low point at one point, and I remember the moment. There was literally a moment. There was literally a time where all of a sudden it just dawned on me, why am I not calling on God? I'm feeling sorry for myself, and why in the world am I? And it was like snapping fingers, and from that point forward, I've never looked back. It's like it all just kind of came together. But what God, I think God purposefully let me get to that really, really low point before saying, okay, you've had enough. Let me reach down with His hand and pull me back up. And, I think that's the way God works. I think we're in those situations for a reason. Anything else you want to say about your story?
Well, since I submitted this back in January, I believe, the update, I did have the surgery. Like I said, I'm 3 weeks post-op, and Addison's moving back May 25th. Some unforeseen circumstances with my ex-husband. So she's actually going to be coming back to live with us permanently, no switchbacks again. But I also feel like, while I had said about Moses in my story, I also feel like I'm Moses, I'm like, but God, I can't do that. I can't, Yeah. So I feel like I also needed this, and it could be a testing and a learning experience for Addison as well. But I also needed this, because what if I didn't and say, hey, no, you're going to stay with me until you're 18 when you're allowed to move out. I think it all happened for the right reason, and everything happened at the right time.
Wow. That's a great way to look at it. Because I'm sure at the time it didn't feel like the right thing.
No, it didn't. There were so many questions, and everything was spiraling. Yeah. Just it kept going, and I had no break from the time Addison and then work started, and it was just on fast pace, go, and stay strong. So yes.
Well, God bless you for getting to the other side of that and having all the realizations that you've had.
Yes,
awesome.
And the relief now, finally.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. Do you struggle with motivation to exercise? Are you looking for something that will challenge you and inspire and motivate you? The Run for God Run Club is just what you need to get off the couch and on your way to a fitter, healthier you. Stop trying to get into better shape and do it. With the help and inspiration of thousands of others who are going through the same challenges you face. Whether you're participating in the Couch to Marathon Challenge or just looking for a daily pick-me-up to get active, join the Run for God Run Club today. You can join for as little as 27 cents a day. So what are you waiting for? Get started today at www.runforgod.com. All right, so we're back. So you and Brian have done some ultra running, right?
Yes.
So how did that come about?
Okay. Well, we're in the South. So, first race ever ran was Run for God in 2015. Did a few 5Ks. Then we call it seasonal running. We run when it's nice out. You hide when it's not. Well, we got serious in 2019. And we did a run. We were starting to do 5Ks in every race since we came down to Dalton. It's like, we got to do this, you know. So we ran the Bluegrass. We did the yearling. And it was our anniversary weekend. So I was like, well, let's just do the yearling. We don't really have to watch what we eat, drink, you know. It's fine. And there was an older lady who was like, oh, what race distance are you doing? Oh, the yearling. Oh, bless your heart. And she was doing the half marathon. And it's like, we know what that means. So that was in March.
Yeah.
Then later in September, we did a full. And then we did our first 50K in December. So that's how we kind of got into it, by someone telling us, bless your heart.
That's funny. It moved kind of quick.
Oh, it did. Yes, I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, but Brian and I are very competitive.
Yeah.
A good, healthy competitive.
Yeah.
We like to spur each other on. Well, today I might have won. If he was in more shape and was running more, you know, he would have beat me. No problem.
He's coming for you.
Oh, yeah, he will.
Well, what is it that you like about running for hours at a time?
Well, I love running on the roads, and I'm not a fan of trail because it is harder, but I love the escape of getting in the woods and running for 3-4 hours. I just love being in the nature, the creation of everything that God has created. And I use that time. It's so peaceful and just praying, and I clear my head. I wish sometimes I had like a little recorder to record all my thoughts. I don't know if you ever get those aha moments in running, and then I get back and I want to tell Brian something. It's like, oh, I can't even remember it, but maybe it wasn't meant to be.
I've been there. Well, and I've mentioned before, a lot of the Dean's Thoughts things that I write come from moments like that the things that I do remember anyway, but I've let just as many slip away as I've written down, for sure. So I think you mentioned to me you like the longer stuff more than like 5Ks.
Yes.
You don't like that more intense pain of a 5K, do you?
No, I don't like the burning and the hurting. I just want to give up because it's so hard. Everyone has their hard. My hard for me is to run the ultras, because I'm pushing myself on, can I make that 31 miles or 50 miles, you know, versus, you know, someone could get a 14-minute 5K, and that's hard for them, and it would be, I'd probably call a paramedic, but to me, I love that long distance. That's hard and good for me. I love it.
I get it. We're all different from that standpoint, because I like the shorter stuff better. I've never run an ultra race. I did run 50 miles one time on my birthday.
Yes.
Just on a whim. And,
even though I already told you it is an ultra.
Yeah.
Because our first 50 miler was on our own because it had canceled because of COVID. And then we finally was able to do one then. Actually, 2 days after we moved in, we decided then, hey, let's run 50 miles. So,
well, how do you fuel for your long runs? What's your trick on keeping fueled well?
Now, I do water. I found that you add anything to it, it makes me thirstier.
So even the long hours, you still just water.
I mean, I'll do Gatorade every once in a while, especially if it's on the race course, but I can't do the Goose or any kind of jelly beans. I have to do food.
Okay.
I have to do real food? I'll do like the Uncrustables because it's easy to pack, or like I'll cut up little beef jerky because then it has the sodium and protein in there.
Yeah.
So
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks like that that don't do well with the pre-made stuff. They do better
I've tried
with
applesauce too. That doesn't work.
Does it not?
Consistency. I can't do that on a run.
I guess I could see that. Yeah, I remember one time somebody telling me that during an Ironman competition that chicken broth is just fantastic. That you won't taste anything better than chicken broth when you're doing it. I did an Ironman, and I remember I got off the bike, I went into my run. I was 2 miles into the run, and I was like, there was some chicken broth. I thought, I'm gonna try it. It's gonna be awesome. And I tried it, and I was like, ugh, that was awful.
Yeah, it's all in what you know.
Yeah.
That would definitely be something not to try.
Yeah. It's just, it's the way it goes. Anyway, I read a story recently about I can't remember her name, but she's the best ultramarathoner in the game right now.
It could be Camille Herron.
That may be her
blonde
name.
hair.
Yeah, she just set the 48-hour record.
Okay.
She actually ran further in 48 hours than any American man has run. So she's got the American record for men and male and female. I don't remember how many miles she ran in 48 hours, but she doesn't do long runs. She very rarely does long runs, which I thought was interesting. You'd think an ultra runner, you'd probably do a lot of long runs.
Yeah.
But she doesn't do a lot of long runs. So I thought that was crazy. All right. It is a time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Do you worry about what others think about you?
If I'm honest, I probably do more than I should.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think we're all, I'm around teenagers a lot, and they're so self-conscious about it. This one is called Don't Worry About Others. I remember talking with someone years ago who didn't know how to rollerblade. I invited her to go to a local park and roll around a bit, but she didn't want people to see her trying to learn how to rollerblade. Well, and she was a little worried about falling down and hurting herself. I get it. No one likes to feel like they look like a fool, especially a fool with a skinned up knee. I remember another lady who had a dream to publish a book. She had written pages and pages of stories, but almost no one had ever seen them. She wanted to work on them some more before allowing others to see her work. She was worried about what others would think about her writing ability. None of us are immune. When I was young, I would never dance in front of people. I was a terrible dancer. Actually, I'm still a terrible dancer, and I didn't really want anyone to see me trying to do something I couldn't do proficiently. We all have a tendency to put things off until we're ready. Another example would be having children. You hear about couples putting off having children until they're ready, but every parent knows you're never ready. I could cite one example after another, but the point is that we don't really like the process of learning or doing a new thing. Or do we? Think about the last time you learned something new. How many things have you ever learned that you absolutely hated learning? I know I can't think of an example. The truth is that the learning part is often fun. So why don't we want to learn how to rollerblade where others can see us, or let others see our work before we think it is ready, or hit the dance floor? I think it's all about the comfort zone. Whether the problem is how others perceive us, which is uncomfortable, or the learning process itself, it is all about making yourself uncomfortable in the short run. But in the long run, we know it will be worth it. Teenagers are the worst. I once tried to give a teenager a new pair of racing shoes. He really wanted a pair of spikes, and I had an extra pair in his size that I was willing to give him. They had only been worn for one 8K race. They were essentially new. He couldn't afford to buy a pair, but he wouldn't wear them. Why? Because the colors were a little flashy, and he was afraid of what his friends would think about them. Peer pressure can be tough, even when it's probably not even there. The truth is that we shouldn't worry about what others think about us. Well, with a few exceptions. We certainly want to please our parents and our spouses, but they would only be supportive if our endeavors to learn new things. There is one exception, though, Jesus. We should want to do all we can do to be obedient to him. But there are times we compromise with our faith, too. I was in a coaching class one time when I was confronted by the instructor about my faith. He was an atheist, and I could feel the disdain he had for my faith. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he asked me a very pointed question that forced me to make a decision. Would I be bold in my answer and stand up for Christ, or would I take the easy path and go with the conventional answer? I answered very boldly in a way that I think put a smile on God's face. And do you know what happened? We became friends. And as uncomfortable as he had made me when he put me on the spot in front of 30 other people, it was definitely worth the few seconds of sweat on my brow. I am so glad I answered the way I did. Often we're afraid of what others will think of us if we're bold for Christ. I really thought he would keep pressing me and that we may have even gotten into an argument during a break. Instead, he invited me out to Arizona to run a race he directed annually. The opposite had happened. Isn't that the way it works so often? When we're scared to get out on the rollerblades or to publish a book or to dance in front of people or to have children, we're usually scared of nothing. If you're a new runner, maybe even a slow, overweight runner who needs to walk frequently, don't worry about what others think. Very often, they're thinking the exact opposite of what you think they think. When I see someone really struggling to run, do you know what I think? I think, that's awesome that she's out here doing her best. Don't worry about what others think, mostly because you have no idea what they're thinking, and it doesn't matter anyway. You're playing to an audience of one, and when you're trying really hard to do something for yourself that will better you in some way, he is smiling while you try.
Amazing story.
Well, thank you.
And, it has to be a God thing. So Irene has helped me, a lot through this. And I just now noticed that. I had told her, I'm going out of my comfort zone. I'm going to be doing the podcast. I was like, say a prayer for me. It's today. She's like, remember your audience of one.
Isn't that funny?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the way. And you got the comfort zone shirt on too.
Yes. I had to have it I was like, I'm out of my comfort zone all weekend.
That's
so
awesome.
That's awesome.
That is so good. That's so good. The thing about it is we all have different personalities, and I don't care if I look silly for the most part these days. I really just doesn't bother me, so I'm willing to do almost anything. There's still, even though I don't mind that though, there's still always a little bit of a reluctance to do things and to try things, and I kind of have to force myself to try things.
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard the story, the Hey Out of Shape Girl.
Yes, I have.
Okay. But I think that more people think that way than don't. Mm-hmm. The whole story is about a lady who goes to a track and she's really bad out of shape and she's running around the edge. She doesn't even want to run on the track because she feels not worthy of being on that track. And the people that are watching, it's written from the eyes of somebody who spends a lot of time at the track and is proficient at it, and basically looks at her and just says, if you'll look at me, I think what you're doing is awesome. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so many people who are like that. And so often when we're scared to get out of our comfort zone and do something hard, I think most people would look at us and go, that is so awesome that you're doing it. And we think they're going to look at it a whole different way.
Exactly. Right? Yes.
I mean, how often have you said something and then somebody says something and you think they took it in a negative way, but they didn't mean it the way that it sounded, or, we misinterpret things all the time, don't we?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I hear people, the world is full of mind readers these days. You listen to the news and everybody is proscribing the intentions of everybody else. The person is saying, this is why I did it. And this person over here is going, no, this is why you did it. Really, you're in my mind. You know better than I do. It's crazy the way we are these days. And I think that's what that makes it harder to get out of our comfort zone, because we see that, right?
Yes.
And so we know that there are people out there. The problem is those are the loud people, but they're not the important people, you know? And I think that's where we have to get to the realization. So I think the world has a way of defaulting to the most negative thing possible. I think social media is to blame for a lot of it, because I think that people, two ways that happens. One, you have the anonymity thing where it's easy to denigrate somebody if you can't tell who that person is, and you can do that anonymous stuff, and that's bad because you get attacked and that person doesn't even know who you are. And then the other side of that is you also are on social media. You see people who their lives look perfect. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, my life's not as perfect as hers is. And the truth is she's covering a whole lot of stuff up. I mean, she ain't posting all the bad stuff.
Exactly.
Right. But we see all that positive and we think, man, why can't my life be like that? Well, probably a good chance your life is better than that person's. And they're overcompensating sometimes for what's really going on. Mm-hmm. And the truth is we all have those things going on that we'd rather not share. Right? But I think we'd all be better off if we just thought about everything we do is only important to how God thinks about it. Mm-hmm. Right? And that would make, how much of a difference would it be if everything we did, right now, I don't know how it is in the workplace where you work, but there's a lot of places now where there's cameras everywhere. Mm-hmm. Right? And so it's a little intimidating to know there's a camera on you all the time. But how would it be? What would it be like? How would we act different if Jesus was in the corner of every room we walked into?
Oh, we would watch what we say, thought, acted, for sure. Yeah.
But is it the truth that he is?
Exactly. He's already in us.
Yes.
So we should already be thinking that way. Yeah. But so often we don't, because we don't see the physical. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, the other part of this that I mentioned in this story is that we can't wait until we're ready. Sometimes you just got to rip the Band-Aid off and go after something, even when you don't feel like you're ready. I remember a story one time about a guy who he was charged with creating a training program, and he had 12 modules that he had to write, and it took him half of the allotted time he had to write it. It took him half that time to do the first one. And he realized when he got through with it, oh my goodness, there's no way I can get through with 12 unless I do something different. So the reason why the first one took him so long is because he spent so much time trying to make it perfect. So on the second one, what he did was he went through it as fast as he could and got the general ideas. Then he went back and just kind of modified things a little bit, and he found out that was a lot faster than trying to make sure everything was perfect from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, he winds up getting it done because he winds up realizing that trying to be perfect is just too time consuming.
Yes.
That you just got to do the best you can with what you got sometimes. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that in the end, it's probably going to be pretty close to that thing that if you'd have spent 3 times as much time on it, it's probably pretty close to the same thing. Mm-hmm. And, it was a good story. Don't worry about what others think. Worry about what God thinks, and we'll all be better off.
As a Christian runner, you might find it hard to decide what to listen to while you run. If you're looking for positive and Christian music that will help you keep your pace, check out the Radioactive station on the new J Radio. We'll take care of picking the music so that you can concentrate on your run. Plus, you can count on us to make sure that the music is uplifting and encouraging. Check out jradio.com or download the app in your app store.
All right, every week I share a reason why running or walking is so awesome. And this week, I had to use this one while Mitchell wasn't here. Track meets. I love track meets. Mitchell hates high school track meets. And I get why he hates them, because they do seem to last forever. There's lots of time in between events. Like there's nothing going on. And can you imagine a football game where the huddle lasted for 10 minutes each time? It would be really boring. That's kind of the way a track meet feels sometimes. But I love them. The variety in track meets is so interesting to me. The pole vault is just an interesting thing. And Then you got distance runners, you got sprinters. They're so different. The people, they're so different. It's not just the different events, the people, the personalities, they're so different. And so I just think that's one of the interesting things about running in general is the difference in people. It's fun. All right. Final thoughts? You got anything that you want to share that we haven't shared to this point?
Well, like I said, just recovering now and taking it one step at a time. I know that my goal was to make a fist so that I could get back to running, and the first run back was this week, and then with the race for the 5K. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. So are you able to do stuff with your hand, or is it?
Well, today
really
during the race, it was really rough. I thought I was actually going to have to walk, and I prayed, and it subsided, the swelling, because then it got hot once the fog lifted, but it's getting there. It's not all the way. We'll see on Monday if he's happy with that or not, but
So it's carpal tunnel release surgery?
Carpal tunnel, and then I had the trigger finger to where when I closed my finger, I had to pry it open. It was that bad. It was locking up and making a pop noise, so we'll see. I still can't bear weight or anything yet on it.
I used to, when I was in manufacturing, I worked in human resources and dealt with a lot of carpal tunnel syndrome over the years. So I'm very, very familiar with it. So whenever I get to that point, some of the things that you're talking about, where you feel like things are just bearing down on you. And you have all this pressure, and you feel you don't know where to turn, and sometimes you feel alone. And do you feel more inclined to want to go run in those moments, or less? I always feel more inclined. I want to go out there and just bury myself in a long run.
Yes,
is that the way you felt?
It's not only just like a stress reliever. To me, I feel like it helps me mentally. I have the clarity of going out on a run and being able to just pound it out, whether I'm running fast or slow. It's just being able to just go out and get a fresh breath of air, and just have it all out instead of, all locked inside my mind.
Yep. I understand it. So what are your future running plans? You plan to run any more ultras, or you plan to run shorter stuff? You want to get shorter? You want to get faster, or you want to be able to run longer?
Well, we were actually signed up for a race to do the 50-miler in July. But with my injury and everything, I had already missed 3 months of my training plan. So with prayer and the help of Irene, I've decided to step back from that. And it was one of those fear of missing out. I felt like I had to do it again, and it's like, well, I'm still an ultra runner if I never run another ultra.
That's a fact.
And so while I may have a few more oncoming medical issues going on, I plan on just going with Run for God's schedule and hopefully do marathon or half marathon in Mississippi and then cheer on everyone else. So that's the plan.
Well, good.
So maybe, I'm going up to Wisconsin to Michelle's race and support her. So I'm hoping to beat my time then. Good. So that's my faster.
All right. Well, good. So a little bit of both.
Yeah.
All right. So I was reading this week that, and I don't know why this came up, but I was reading this week that Eliud Kipchoge, do you know who that is?
Yes. Yeah, he broke the 2 hours.
Yes. So he sleeps 10 hours a day. He gets a 2-hour nap every day. Would you sleep that much if you could?
I don't think so. I don't think I could. I feel like I would be tired, even with this time off.
That fear of missing out thing again.
Yeah. And just then you're sleeping, and then you'd be used to it. Then what happens when my schedule gets broken up and I can't sleep 10 hours anymore?
I guess if you're the best marathoner in the world, you can afford to do that.
Yeah.
Well, do you ever read running books?
Yes, I have a few of them, and actually I had to screenshot them because I was like trying to figure out what they were.
I get that.
So some of them, the one is Eat and Run by Scott Jerk. Now it has some language in it, and he's an ultra runner, and it shows from where he was in his childhood. And I feel like I kind of can relate because he came from a very poor family, and then why he ran, and then
he's a plant-based eater, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He actually has a cookbook, I believe, too. And he has another book, North. I haven't read that yet. George actually said that was a good book, so I have to read that. But I just love that. And Dean Carnegie, he has a lot of good books. The 50-50, where he ran 50 states, 50 days. I mean, it's amazing what our bodies can really do if we put our mind to it. Yeah. And I just love that.
Yeah. His story is crazy. Dean's story is crazy. The way he kind of discovered running, just because he just went out and ran all night long.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Crazy story. Yeah. What about running movie? Is there a running movie that you really like?
Well, there's a lot. I have a lot of them, but Extraordinary, I would say. It's a Christian book or a Christian movie. It's a true story on a marriage and the coach doing a cross country from California to New York. And
really?
It's about a marriage, a struggling marriage, and him finding God and talking to God through it. And I just love it. Now, I don't know if I would ever run across the United States, but I just love that endurance part. And to be a part of something like that, even if it's crewing someone, is just amazing.
I've never heard of that movie. That's crazy.
Yes.
I thought I'd heard every running movie. Extraordinary, it's called.
Yes, Extraordinary.
Okay. I got to remember that. I got to look it up for sure. Yeah, I love running movies. Matter of fact, I just rewatched recently. There's an old running movie. It was made in 1961, I think. Okay. It's called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner.
Okay, no, I haven't heard that one.
It's very interesting. It's about a man who he kind of gets himself into trouble, just little stuff, and he winds up in jail, and he winds up running a cross country race as part of the jail team. And it's an interesting look. It's it's not a Christian movie, but it's an interesting movie. Anyway, what it's kind of one of those what would you do if you were in his shoes kind of thing. Interesting,
right?
So that's interesting. And I don't know. There's a bunch of them out there.
McFarland USA.
McFarland is a great movie. Matter of fact, we're supposed to watch it Monday night with the track kids. I think we're going to watch that then. So, because they love that movie. They have their region meet next week. So we're going to try to get that movie in and watch it and try to get them kind of excited and pumped up for the region meet. So yeah. And books wise, have you ever read Duel in the Sun?
No, I have not.
Okay. You need to read Duel in the Sun.
Okay.
Because Duel in the Sun, there's two guys, Dick Beardsley and Alberto Salazar, guys from back in the 80s that ran the Boston Marathon, and it's known as the Duel in the Sun. But it's a lot more than just talking about that race. It does talk about that race, but it also talks about both of their lives and the things that have happened to them. Very well written and a very interesting story on both of them. So I think that's probably my favorite. All right. Let's leave you with a trivia question this week. The trivia question is this. Very, very simple and straightforward. What is VO2 max? We hear that phrase. What is and we hear the word VO2 max. What does that mean? So be the first one to send that to dean@runforgod.com, and you'll win a $20 discount on the Run for God store. So what is VO2 max? It sounds kind of mysterious a little bit if you don't know what it means.
Yes.
So look it up. Google it. And I'll leave you with this motivational thought of the week. It comes from Helen Keller. When one door of happiness closes, another opens. But often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which has opened before us. Isn't that awesome?
Yes.
That, we're always worried about what we lost and never worried about what's coming up next. And very often we got something better coming up. And that's probably where you are right now with your whole story is you got great stuff coming, and maybe the door hasn't quite been fully opened yet, or maybe it's partially opened, and it's that's awesome. Don't dwell, move on. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for doing this. We appreciate you being here and sharing your story with us.
Well, I appreciate that extra email to get me out of my comfort zone.
Again, funny how God works, isn't
it?
Yep, it's funny. All right, folks, until next week, may God bless every step of every run and or walk. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.